Welcome to the Planning Board meeting of April 9th, 2024. We call the meeting to order at 7:07 PM. If we would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Our first order of business is a public hearing continued on the application of K&G Development Corporation requesting a special permit pursuant to sections 3800 and 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw and a definitive subdivision pursuant to the Carver subdivision control bylaw for property located at 85 Wenham Road in Carver, Mass., Assessors Map 99, lots 23-0, in the Residential Agricultural Zoning District. The applicant proposes a 5-lot subdivision under the Conservation Subdivision Bylaw. All right, do we have anybody here to speak? If you could just introduce yourself for our minute taker.
For the record, Scott Fanar with Grady Consulting. I believe we met on March 12th about this project. Since then, we've had a site walk. There's also been a peer review that was done. So I'll just kind of summarize the changes to the project. One of the larger changes was we're requesting a waiver. The waiver is for the slope of the roadway, and this was discussed at the last hearing and on site. And this waiver allows us to reduce the amount of material that will be removed from the site. So essentially the grade went from, I believe, 4% up to 8%.
If you could pull the microphone a little closer, Scott.
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
So that was one of the large changes. We also got some input from the fire department. So we also added a fire suppression system. Essentially that's a fire hydrant down at the base of the road, down by Wenham. And then another fire hydrant up at the top of the cul-de-sac with a main in between. That system it's twofold. It's partially for if the town does ever get town water, it can easily tie into that. It was also described to me that if there were a fire, that they would bring the water truck down to the base of the road at Wenham Road and just pump it up to the next hydrant and then use that hydrant to deal with any issues. I overheard there was a question about why the reason for the two hydrants there. Then we also revised the configuration of the cul-de-sac. Initially, we had requested a waiver for a more of a typical cul-de-sac configuration. Again, input from the fire department, they asked us to go back to the town-approved cul-de-sac, which is kind of this elongated, less of a circle. It was described to me that it's easier to maneuver around. So with that, there were a few changes to the lot sizes, lot areas, in order to just meet the minimum requirements. There were also some minor changes to the stormwater design, really more technical than anything large. And then a lot of the other revisions were really more so drafting than anything else. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. My first question is going to be on the conventional lot configuration. It shows the original road that's still there was the proposed road, but you're moving it over to the middle of the hill, which is going to require extensive earth removal. Why would that? Why is that being done? Why isn't it being proposed where the original roadway is and not, why is it being moved over to where the hills are?
Yep, no, I understand. I think this question came up during the site walk too. So yeah, the question is that there is an existing driveway that goes in. to the property there, and the roadway that we're proposing is shifted over. And really, that's to allow area for the drainage easement off to the left side. So if you don't mind going to the next sheet. Sheet 3.
3.
Yeah.
This is the conventional yield plan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Back to. Yeah, there you go. So up on the left, to the left of the proposed roadway, that's the drainage easement that's needed. So if we were to shift the proposed roadway to more so align with that existing driveway, there just really wouldn't be enough room to put an adequate drainage system over there.
So if I'm done,
And
allow Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
There's no camera. I
Oh,
can't see anything.
I see a camera there, but it's not turned on. Yeah, it says Town of Carver.
Give me a call, John.
Would you know how to do it?
No. Do you want me to go down and get John?
If you don't, if you know where he is.
My question, just before I run downstairs so you can think about it, is, so let me understand this. The reason why the earth removal is so that you can create that easement. And if the easement wasn't there, you wouldn't have to remove so much earth.
well, the roadway with the elevations and the slope, it is what it is, what it's designed as. Whether we shift it over to the left where it won't require moving that hill over, or where it is proposed to move the hill over, the cut fill would be the same.
Okay.
So in order to, if we were to move the roadway over to where that current driveway is, basically what that would look like is all of the lots would have to go further back, and would be taking away some area that would go to that conservation restriction, because we would need more area up toward the front of the property to handle the drainage area.
Thank you. I'll go get him.
Right, I'm gonna,
But I think I can figure it out. I just need to log into the Zoom.
Oh.
So
Oh, you can figure it out?
As long as-
I'm gonna go anyways, just in case.
yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess here for a second so we can sort out some issues with our electronics.
Dan, you can't help with that, baby. They just need to turn, they just need the camera turned on. I'm gonna run down and get John, just in case you can't figure it out.
Right, I don't know whether it's being run out, oh, it's being run out of there. Oh. Kevin, we're good. If you could, Dan, could you shut down the stairway for me? I didn't realize it was attached to a computer up there too, but I see the keyboard now.
Yeah, I looked at it to see if there was something over the
Right, yeah?
covering the lines, but I didn't see anything like that.
Not my area of expertise. So, all right, so what you're saying is, in order, all right, I'm asking because this is a historically and culturally sensitive area, and that the cemetery that's listed up there is from the 17 and early 1800s, and contains a lot of Carver's oldest residents. So I'm wondering, you're saying that you would have to move it to another area of the property in order to replicate the infiltration basin?
Yeah, so where the drainage system is proposed right now, that's the lowest point to the site. Essentially, the site slopes from about the middle all the way back down to the road. So, the best point to collect that is right where it's proposed there. And if we were to shift the roadway over to, I'm just gonna use left and right here, over to the left, then we wouldn't have enough area in there to adequately treat all the stormwater on site.
All right, because it does raise concerns because of the closeness it is to the cemetery in my regard. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Yeah. So,
How far is cemetery?
if we were, the cemetery's right here. If we were
How
to,
far is the first lot from the cemetery? Or how far is that easement infiltration system gonna be from the cemetery line?
Yeah,
the easement goes right up to the property line. The property line, this is the cemetery right here.
And can we assume that there are no graves on that line of where you're gonna remove earth?
Yeah, so the cemetery over here, it's actually up quite a bit higher than the existing grades are right here.
Right. But who would we
So-
talk to about whether or not it would disturb any graves?
Right, again, they weren't exactly, a lot of them disappeared because I took a walk through there. A lot of them aren't marked any longer. A lot of headstones are broken, so I can't, I wouldn't even know. I'm sure the Historical District Commission isn't even certain where people are buried in regards
Okay.
to that.
Basically, what you're telling us is due to the fact that that is where the natural pitch is for the infiltration system, that's where it has to be.
Well, he's saying that's the lowest point because that's where the existing roadway is, which creates it as the lowest point.
Yeah, but I understand that up to the top here, we are taking a bit of that hill away, and that seems to be a concern. But if we were to shift this road down here, this area tightens up, so then we'd have to have the basin come all the way up over to this side just to match the area. In which case, we're swapping, taking out this hill versus taking out this hill.
What's the
You can't
lesser of
just-
the two evils?
What's that?
What's the lesser of the two evils? What you're
Sure.
presenting to us?
I believe this is the best option. Yes, because again, if we were to slide the road down here and elongate this drainage basin, it's going to have a ripple effect. So all these lots down here are going to go further to the back, which would take away the amount of area that would go for that conservation.
Again, this is the best place for it.
Yes.
Again, I have concerns because I feel that its closeness to the cemetery and how it will appear from the road is going to considerably change that particular area in regards to its cultural and historical significance, not to mention I have concerns about maybe we don't know where everybody's buried. And that's why I'm bringing this up.
Mr.
So-
Chair, you go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So, when we're talking about building this, the runoff area here, how much digging do you guys need to do?
So the top of the basin is proposed at 97.5 and the bottom's at 94.5. So it's really only 3 feet deep.
Okay.
Can you break that down to how many, did we already have this discussion? How many 18-wheeler vehicles or 10-wheeler vehicles we're talking?
Or the
So-
estimated amount of earth removal.
For the entire site,
Well, no, in regards to
in regards to that basin,
the hill and the roadway and how much of the hill is going to be removed.
yeah, I don't have that. I don't have that number offhand.
I do believe I asked for that before.
Right, I thought 30,000 square feet was, or yards
I
was
need to be
mentioned.
wrong.
Right.
That kind of sounds right, and we did ask.
Yeah, but
That
that was
could be
before
broken
they
down.
were gonna change the pitch of the road, so.
But they're removing the material from the property, right?
If I may, real quick.
Please, speak loudly.
Yeah, so the 100 and the 102, is that like initial height, or is that where you, is that post
So this
digging, or is this, I'm just trying to think, because we have the line here, we've got the cemetery here, how much of this is going to be undisturbed? And how close are we getting with regard to the disturbance?
So down in this area, if you've been on site, you know that this is a low area, so this is
Right.
actually, this is at elevation 98. And then up on the cemetery, it goes up about 4 feet or so. So these proposed contour lines, 102, this is the 102 contour line, so it's really not a
Right.
huge adjustment.
Yeah,
So again, this is at an elevation of 98, and we're gonna bring this basin down to 94 and a half, so it's 3.5 feet that we'll be removing.
right, so how close are we, so we're getting into the disturbance areas around here, how close are we to the line right there?
Oh, this is the property line right here.
Right.
Yeah. How close is the
Distance-wise.
basin?
Yeah, how many feet am I walking away from the property line to get to the 98?
By eye, it looks about 15 feet.
Okay.
Mr. Glines?
Andy Glines with Fuss and O'Neill. I agree with the applicant. This is the best location to put the basin. Understand the board's concerns with the proximity of the proposed grading in relation to the property line, specifically the property line with the cemetery. I agree with the applicant that the 3.5 feet of cut in general seems reasonable to create a basin, and a portion of the embankment around the basin is actually going to be constructed in fill. Need to bring some fill material in to do that. One of my thoughts to potentially pull some of the proposed contours further from the property line would be to elongate the basin and reallocate a portion here to keep the same storage, but potentially could move this portion of the embankment further from the cemetery. But I think, as the applicant was alluding to, there's a trade-off there where they'd need to do more cut into the existing slope in order to do that. So I guess I think it would be beneficial if the applicant and the board kind of discuss which is more critical, whether or not they want to limit the amount of cut for creating the basin, or if they'd want to reconfigure this where I think the applicant should be able to elongate the basin and cut more into this slope and maybe pull the 102, 100, and 98 contours further away from that property line.
And if I understand right, that would impact the conservation
Yes.
part of this equation?
Yes.
Can I ask a hypothetical question, Andy?
Sure can.
If and I assume the town owns the cemetery?
Yeah, so it's the property.
Yep.
So yeah, it's confirmed here on the.
So if the town owns the cemetery and you have to remove some material, is that material going to stay on site? Or is it being removed off-site?
So the applicant wouldn't be removing material from the cemetery lot, but I guess I'd let the
where I
applicant
was
respond
going
to.
with that is, if they have to remove material in order to make that easement, would it be possible to give that material to the town for the cemetery at that line, at that property line, for drainage, for the purpose of not having to remove it off-site? Or are you not removing any material from the site?
We will be removing from the site. I'm not sure I really understand the question of.
Could
Are
you
you-
just put it on, if the town agrees to it, can it be put on the other side of the property line for the cemetery?
Oh, there are issues with the markers and everything that's over there. Some of them are hard to see busted.
I think I hear somebody out in the audience saying it's not our problem, but,
No, he said there's not enough room.
okay,
It's really tight.
got it.
I think we would like to see a fence proposed along the side of the cemetery.
A fence?
Yeah,
Okay, sure.
just to clearly separate, and to help protect the historic nature of the cemetery.
Well, you'd have to put a silt fence anyways, wouldn't you?
For erosion control, yes, definitely. But you're talking about a permanent
Yes.
fence along the property line?
Something to define,
Yeah, that's,
right, because I know there's a fence around 3/4 of the side, but if we're gonna see a lot more activity in that area. I want to see that the cemetery is somewhat protected.
Yeah, I agree. I think
So
that's
again,
a good
what are we gonna do
idea.
with the material that gets removed? We're gonna take it off-site?
Yes, there will be some material removed off-site, both for the drainage basin and for the roadway.
If we could get an estimate in regards to the amount of earth removal necessary, not tonight,
Sure.
but just an idea. All right, so I'm gonna go through some of our peer review. Why don't you want to locate the existing trees having caliper of 12 inches or more?
For the entire site,
Right.
it's a large, it's a 5-lot subdivision. I would say it's fairly uncommon that all 12-inch diameter trees are individually located for a project of this size.
We want to maintain as many 12-inch caliper trees as possible
Yep.
in this town. The state is pushing us to also make it mandatory that 10 inches and larger either be kept or replaced, so that's something we're working towards, but currently it's for 12-inch trees. And we understand the necessity of progress, but we would certainly like to see as many 12-inch caliper trees as possible kept on site.
So to that point, just to talk about the minimal impacts that we're having here, there's a requirement of a 30-foot buffer between the house and the tree line. That's really all we're clearing out is just between that 30 feet and for the roadway, and we're proposing trees in the roadway easement as well.
And you're planning on clearing the whole lot of trees? The whole proposed subdivision area of trees?
Just for what's required for the grading and to provide that 30-foot buffer.
Well, there's a difference between a tree line and freestanding trees, and that's part of what we're trying to consider here. So why aren't they being marked? I mean, what's your rationale in regards to not providing it? They're just too many, too extensive,
Yes, it would be a large effort, and it's really not common for projects of this size. And trees, when there's grading proposed, typically have to be taken out.
And what kind of grading is proposed for the lots?
The grading proposed for lots is to be as minimal as possible, but it's also intended to slope, so all that new area goes down into our infiltration system, because we can't be allowing additional runoff to off-site to the property.
Right.
So
Yep. All right. Were you planning on proposing and bringing in any fill for anything?
bringing in fill,
Right.
I don't imagine we'll be bringing any fill. I believe there'll be enough material on site.
What about redistributing what's being proposed to be removed in regards, because I'm going to go by the 30,000 feet or yards that were mentioned at the last meeting in regards to that. How much of that is going to be redistributed through the site, or is it all going to be removed?
Well, he's going to try to balance the site as best as possible. That was the intent of increasing the road grades. It's easiest to work when you can just balance the site, but because of the road and the way that the grades work, there will be some material that'll have to be removed.
Okay. But we'd like an idea of how much.
Sure, we can provide you that.
A condition is recommended that observation pits for roadway cuts and fill, Mr. Glines, if you would, shall be performed prior to placement of roadway base, and results shall be submitted to the town.
So the applicant did provide some test pit information, but the test pits weren't provided within the proposed footprint of the road. So we would just like to recommend including a condition that during construction, that is a requirement that the Operation Maintenance Department and/or Fuss & O'Neill has a chance to observe the results of that. It's important when there's grading required to basically get the a road profile like this to work out where the test bits done during existing conditions don't necessarily reflect the soil conditions once the road's being constructed.
Excellent. The fire protection system wasn't waived, and we've gone over that already, right?
Yes.
Did you go over the clear cutting? What was going to be clear cut for this?
I haven't, it was kind of touched on a minute ago where it's all gonna be pretty much clear cut back to the tree line.
I wasn't present for that.
No, I mean, he was, I believe the applicant just stated that it's got, everything's gonna be wiped out up to the tree line, except for what's going to be replanted for.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
May I ask your client to maybe consider replanting some seedlings in the town elsewhere for the amount of clear cutting that has to take place to put this in? I'm not asking for, thousands of seedlings, but, a small donation in good faith that quite a bit of clear cutting has to be done in order to make this happen.
Okay. Where,
You're
Wh-
taking a lot of trees down, so would you maybe consider having some seedlings replanted throughout town somewhere else,
Or even on the subdivision.
or on the subdivision?
Because I'm not sure that.
We
have-
can't condition
right.
it, but it would be a good gesture. I'm not a fan of clear cutting for anything.
Based on the contours of the grading, trees that are there, if there were all trees, it'd be great, because you would because of the
I'm sorry, if you'd have to come up and introduce yourself,
My
please.
fault for asking
No,
you
no,
directly.
it's all right, it's all right.
Page 7 also shows some tree planting.
Right, we haven't quite gotten to the landscaping
Sorry
plan.
to jump again.
No,
I'm sorry.
no, it's pretty common that people don't recognize it. If you could introduce yourself, please.
I'm Bob Goslin.
Thank you, Bob.
With K&G Development, excuse my voice. We're proposing to plant trees around the subdivision, and I guess that's kind of like, I don't mind, I mean, if there was a dollar amount that they wanted, the town wanted me to donate to
No, we
something.
don't do that.
I guess that's an open question as far as how many plants.
So what I'm saying to you is, it would be a kind gesture for you to make some kind of donation to replant some seedlings in this town. I know it's not your fault that the amount of clear cutting that has to be done in order to put this subdivision in, but it would be a kind gesture to have some trees planted somewhere else in town, or to plant a lot of trees in this subdivision. You can use seedlings. You have the equipment and the property, replant a lot of what is going to have to be cleared out of there, replant it.
I know you guys haven't seen any of my previous subdivisions, but generally what I do is I go back in, and especially on the lot lines, I try and replant those so people, they know they have some privacy. And the type of plantings usually depends on the grading and things like that. So I certainly will be putting more in here, and I'm open to discussion. I guess that's just kind of
I
like.
would just like you to consider taking some of the seedlings that are gonna be stripped off of this property and you reseed them. Replant them. That's it.
I guess I say yes.
I can't condition it, so
No.
I'm asking you to consider doing that. I would appreciate it. I think my fellow board members would appreciate it. I think people that appreciate the value of a tree would appreciate it. So if you could do that.
Well, that was
I
the
would
main,
appreciate it.
that was the main reason why we went to this type of subdivision instead of extending it all the way in. Was,
You will be saving a large area of conservation land.
Correct.
And that is,
that's the main reason we did
You can
that.
put it there. You can put the seedlings there.
I don't think there's any room, but I definitely will consider it. And if there's a tree watering or a highway guy that wants to come down and when we're, and take anything, I have no problem with that either.
I'm just asking you, when it's being developed, when it's being stripped, could you consider replanting some of what's being stripped on other places on that property where the dwellings are not going to be? That's it.
Absolutely,
I'll just leave it at that.
yes.
Thank you.
All right. All of these buildings are 50 feet from the property line?
They all meet the minimum setback requirements of the lot lines, yes.
Okay.
So stay.
All changes, I'm coming back to you, Mr. Lyons. All changes in grading exceeding 0.5% shall be connected by vertical lines not less than 150 feet in length for minor streets. You recommend this waiver? I want to say it's number 10 on the peer review sheet.
Yes, I think it's related to the other waiver that the applicant's requesting regarding the grading of the proposed road as well.
Okay.
They do taper back down to a 2% slope in their profile where they're intersecting with the existing roadway.
And this is to limit the earth removal.
Minimize,
Well, I guess if the applicant wants to address that,
minimize.
Yeah, it's certainly to minimize the earth removal.
Okay.
Also, some of these requirements in here, it seems as though they're in the bylaw with the intention of a standard subdivision. And again, this is a conservation subdivision, so the length of road, we've reduced it significantly. So
Right.
in order to adhere to some of these slope requirements, it's really just not feasible.
Request for waiver of cul-de-sac layout, but we've changed that?
Correct.
Okay. Approval of the waiver for street shall not intersect another street at a gradient of excess of 2%. That was what you were referring to?
I think the applicant revised that from the original. I guess with the profile shown here now, they are intersecting it at 2%.
Okay, excellent, excellent. We will need the DPW to approve the catch basin. You had engineers look at it. I expect the existing catch basin is a 15-inch pipe with ropes. All right, I'll start right, it's number 16, but since the proposed drainage system overflows to an existing municipal drainage system, the applicant must demonstrate that the municipal system is presently functioning adequately from the point of connection to the point of natural discharge. Have you received anything in regards to?
I don't believe we've received anything formal documentation, but
Okay.
I guess I would recommend if the applicant's willing to clean that existing catch basin and clean out the sump and make sure that the grade isn't clogged. I think that would probably be adequate to assure that the existing catch basin in the right of way is functioning adequately to receive the flow from their basin. I don't know if that's amenable to the applicant.
Right?
Sure.
Okay, it solves a lot of problems. The applicant shall provide documentation that the provisions for on-site sewage disposal have been reviewed and approved by the Board of Health. Typically, like they said, that's a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, so Fuss and O'Neill includes those comments, but we ultimately defer to the Board of Health and
Right, and we'll set that as part of our requirements. The waiver for the datum of NGVD 29 shouldn't be an issue. That's pretty standard since it's been upgraded, and that's something that the planning board should address in its requirements and change. So we'll have further
Agreed.
discussions in regards to that. We've included the sidewalk details. We've included a break in the spillway. It shows a break in the berm across the spillway now.
Yes.
Yes, here, heard we.
All right, currently proposed grading will require fill. I expect that'll come from the property itself.
Where, I'm sorry, what are
That's
your?
okay, it says, jeez. I was just reading it, sorry. Revised proposed 112 contour on Lot 3, currently proposed grading will require fill along the southeast property line within the existing vegetation to remain. And it says the grading has been revised, I'm just checking that you're not bringing in fill, that you're gonna use on-site fill.
Definitely.
Please clarify the intent of including the 100-year state storm event in addition to the 100-year rainfall depth listed in the Town of Carver Board of Health regulations for stormwater runoff and management. The applicant shall request a waiver if they intend to use a rainfall data source other than listed in the regulations. I'm not sure that we can provide that waiver. I think that has to go through the Board of Health, so that'll have to be conditional on them.
The Board of Health is the approving
It's-
authority?
It's the Board of Health regulations, it's not a zoning regulation. So the Board of Health will have to provide that waiver to you.
Okay.
And this is to you, Mr. Glines, please clarify the intent of deep leaching beehives.
Yes, we just wanted some clarification. I guess it's not a common approach to have the beehives below the basin. The applicant did provide some clarification in the response to comments. I don't know if you want to elaborate on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, essentially, you talked about it before because of the proximity of the basin to the roadway.
Yep.
We don't want to have a huge open pit.
Right.
So we elected to go with a fairly shallow basin, and now in order to provide additional storage, we're having those beehives put below the basin itself. Or groundwater here, it's beautiful sand. The groundwater is really far down. It just gives it more volume without having to go another foot down of open pit.
Okay, because we want to limit the open pit, but we don't want to limit the capacity.
Right.
Is where we're at.
Right.
And it probably relates to the Carver 100-year rainfall summary shows the peak elevation in pond 31P at 101.45, which exceeds the elevation of the top of the basin at 97.5. And you're going to ask for a waiver request for the 100-year rainfall data. Now, what does that mean to us? If we get the 101 feet and this sits at 97.5 feet, what are the consequences?
So I think it's probably just something that Fuss and O'Neill and the applicant need to work through as far as how they're modeling the basin and how it functions. It's not uncommon for a basin to overtop during 100-year storm events. Unfortunately, we're getting a lot of peak events more frequently now, but we just want to make sure that when stormwater during these intense events is discharged from the basin, it's done at a non-erosive velocity and to another conveyance system that can accommodate it. So
Yes.
I guess I think we just want to take another look at that with the applicant.
Right,
and make sure we
we'll look forward to your recommendation in regards to that. All right.
If I might, Andy, you seem to do a lot of peer reviews. Is that waiver a common waiver that the Board of Health approves,
Um,
going to the state rainfall data rather than the local rainfall data?
I guess typically the applicants will revert back to the Cornell Atlas numbers that are referenced in the Board of Health reg, but I would, Fussin O'Neill would recommend approval of the waiver to the Board of Health if you could show that the data that you're using from the state is recommended by the state, and/or sometimes the rainfall events are more intense than the older Cornell data.
Okay,
So really, I just need a technical justification saying that, Mass DP and the state is recommending that this data be used. And again, similar to the elevation datum, you'd still need the waiver, but it would be not a unreasonable waiver to request.
okay.
And does this also relate to the mounding analysis in regards to the separation of seasonal high groundwater is less than 4 feet?
I guess, well, this
I
all the
can read it.
stormwater
Okay.
components are certainly related, but I guess that would be a more of a question of them providing more backup on the vertical separation between the bottom of the basin and I guess really the beehives and seasonal high groundwater, which I believe potentially could be done by providing a deeper test pit at that location. But again, all related to the stormwater modeling approach.
All right. I see and I think that's almost it for me. So I see the tree line along the buffer areas on the outside of the property. Is that to remain in its natural state?
Yes, it is.
Okay. That's all of my questions. If anybody from the board has any further questions? How about you, Bill?
I do not.
Thank you. All right, so we're expecting a couple more recommendations from you.
Yes, Fussin O'Neill received the response to comments last week as well as a revised plan set today. We did get a chance to do an initial review of the plan set received today, but we're still finalizing the formal comment. After reading through it prior to this meeting, I think there's some minor plan set revisions we'd still want to work through, but for the most part, I think the planning board went through the majority of the conditions and waiver requests that were prudent for tonight's meeting.
All right. Off the top of our head, our next scheduled meeting is April 23rd?
Yes, believe so.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. If you will excuse us for a moment, it is a public hearing, so we are going to open it to the public at this point.
Sure.
I'm gonna assume that we reached out to the abutters. Was it cemetery or
No, there's several abutters, but we'll have to check with Mr. Bott because abutter notification is part of the responsibilities of the planning department, so we'll check on that. All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience interested in asking any questions or comments or concerns in regards to this project? Please, if you would just introduce yourself.
Good evening, Judy Richards, 5 Lillian Way. Looking at the project, I just had a couple of things. The cemetery is a concern of mine. I noticed that there's a shed on the property where they plan on putting a stockpile. So when the project gets approved, can they put the fence up before they start doing anything there to protect the cemetery?
I think we
Just
can
asking
condition
that-
that some form of protection be provided for the
Because if they're going to
cemetery.
be putting that drainage basin right there and then the stockpile of material based on the plans, which I don't see up, I guess I'm just thinking of
I
the
believe
people
I
that.
can answer that by Andy explaining to you what a silt fence is.
Yes, Andy with Fuss and O'Neill. I think it would be prudent to have the developer install silt fence barrier in addition to potentially some intermediate straw wattles along that slope. Really, the silt fence would act as a more visible demarcation barrier to mark the property line, and then I think slightly down gradient of that existing slope. If they install the row of straw wattles, that would help mitigate risk of any real erosion of that slope, which could potentially erode more of that slope than what would be proposed for the proposed grading. And then, as the butter mentioned, I think although certainly recommend and agree that a permanent fence would be beneficial along that property line, I wouldn't want the developer to install the permanent fence and then have that get damaged during construction and then not necessarily be replaced or repaired later. So I think I don't know, silt fence, I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're typically a couple feet high, fabric staked into the ground. So it wouldn't be a visual barrier, but it would be a demarcation barrier to separate and delineate that property line, so it would be visible to the public as well as the developer.
Now, Mr. Glines, while we're on the subject, is there any reasonable issue that we can't prohibit disturbance within 10 feet of the property line, or is that going to be all torn up, or?
So there's regulation that would limit how close structures can be placed to the property line. There isn't as definitive regulation on how close
Well, I'm more concerned, in your professional opinion, is it going to be all torn up all the way to the property line in that area, or is there a reasonable amount of room that we can use to buffer any issues that might arise in regards to the cemetery?
So I can pull up the grading plan again here. So the this being the property line for the cemetery, the applicant is showing proposed contours up to that property line, but really this location here is the only location in close proximity to the property line where they're proposing a cut. This location is actually installing some fill material to create that embankment for the spillway. And then this being the existing 98 contour through here, this existing 98 is almost following that existing contour and topography there. It would be beneficial if this 102 and 100 could be revised so they're not cutting into the slope there, but again, it's not an unreasonable proposed grading plan for development, whether it's a subdivision or otherwise. So I think really the prudent piece would just be to make sure that disturbance and clearing vegetation that's stabilizing the existing land on the developer's property isn't going to cause any erosion that would extend onto the cemetery property, which the silt fence and straw wattles definitely won't eliminate that risk, but it will mitigate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please, you're all set then,
Mhm.
Judy? Thank
Yeah.
you very much for your time tonight. All right. Please step on forward, please, and introduce yourself.
Hi.
And if you would sign in too,
Sure.
because our minute taker doesn't always get the appropriate spellings. And Judy, when you have a moment, could you sign? Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Marjorie Fontes. My maiden name was Brown, so I'm sort of left to be the sole owner of the property on 85 Wenham Road. And I'd just like to say something in regards to the cemetery. I personally probably lived on that property for about 23 years, you know, having gotten married and moved to Plymouth. There used to be a wooden fence all around the cemetery. And I can't recall what year that all the fencing was taken down. And I assume that would have been by the town of Carver because, you know, we wouldn't have touched it. So when they did that, all they put was a vinyl fence in the front. So there hasn't been any fence replaced by the town. You can distinctly see by the even the pitch of the land against where the fence was. So there certainly, I don't think, would be any question that there's any burials beyond that natural landmark. And I do know from some research that I've done that a lot of the Hammond family, which probably was an original owner that my father probably bought the land from, are buried there in the cemetery. Now, my dad did some work for Space Metal Buildings, some stonework, and he desired to have a garage as he got older to putter around in. I never recall any adversity from the town of Carver with us. You know, the garage is really kind of close to the cemetery. I mean, we never got, I think, approached with anything about, you know, the garage being as close or anything as it is. And I do know that that natural roadway has existed for years. Unfortunately, a lot of the pine trees probably have fallen, and if, I don't know who viewed the property, but, you know, there's quite a lot of damage done from the trees naturally falling that, you know, that has to be removed. It's been a while since I've walked way back, and I'm sure there's still, you know, probably some durable trees, but you know, it really is kind of a mess from what has just naturally taken place on the property. My brother was the one that lived there last, so that left me sort of as ownership. But I just wanted to make a comment about the cemetery because that was something that the town did, and I never understood why they didn't put a fence all the way around it. And I also wish that they would repair the stones.
I am in full agreement with
Yeah.
you. I thought it was, I walked through there and there was a lot of damage. Some of the headstones were missing and some of them were partially or completely buried. And I noticed that the Veterans Association does go out and do some amount of work out there.
Well, I do know there are some stones that are missing.
Yeah.
And there's some there that are really damaged.
Yes.
And, you know, the pieces are there. So, you know, I'm just kind of, you know, at what point is the town concerned, you know, about what's going on with the cemetery? That's, you know, but I do know that that's how it was handled. The whole fence was taken down. The neighbor that is on the other side of the cemetery, her house is even closer. And there's no fence, you know, only fences in the front. So there's no fence on either side. And there's quite a few deer on the property that go right through the cemetery over to her property and even eat from her bird feeders. So it's very close on the other side, too, and there's just no fencing because it was just replaced with a fence in the front, which was not like the fence that was there.
Right.
And maybe they felt that the vinyl fence would be more durable, but I never understood, and living next to it, why they didn't put a whole fence around the entirety of it. So that was only my comment, you know.
Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Yeah. I
we
mean,
just
I
want
know-
to concern that no further damage happens to it. I
No,
mean,
no,
it's a very
and
old cemetery.
I don't foresee what, you know, the builder is planning to do is going to upset anything to do with the cemetery.
Right.
And I do realize the history of it because I know there's history even on the property.
Right. We
You
just
know?
want to make sure that there aren't any issues in regards to it. And we're just acting to protect that area also. Because it does have a historic and cultural significance to
Yes,
the
it
town.
does. I know it does, yes. It's hard for me to see it go.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you very much for your time this evening. Is there anybody else who wishes to questions, concerns, or comments? Seeing none. Mr. Glines, we think we can have everything squared away by April 23rd?
I expect we'll be able to issue the hopefully the final comment memo later this week, since we have a draft already together, and that should give the applicant enough time to make any final revisions prior to the next meeting. I don't know if that's.
I agree.
Perfect. Excellent. Further questions, concerns, or comments from the board?
I'm fine.
Seeing none, the chair will accept the motion to continue the public hearing on the application of K&G Development Corporation requesting a special permit for a definitive subdivision plan at 85 Wenham Road in Carver until April 23rd, 2024, 7 p.m., Carver Town Hall, Meeting Room 1.
I'll make that said motion.
Motion made by Mr. Robinson.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Sordillo. Further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Gatsky?
Aye.
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ellen Sedillo says aye.
Don Williams says aye.
Mr. Shea says aye. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
See you.
All right.
The other thing was a continuance, right?
Yes, it is. I just want to, I'll straighten this out after the meeting. All right.
I hope I didn't overstep the line. I know
Well, no, it's,
why they were cleared by the, and why
no, you were well within your rights, and I appreciate it. All right, our next order of business is on the public hearing continued on the application of Bridgestone Development Incorporated requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 2230C, 3100, 4341, and 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw located at lot number 4, Ricketts Pond Drive in Carver, Mass., Assessors Map 32, Lot 1-4 in the Spring Street Innovation Zoning District. The lot will be comprised of a 7,494 square foot commercial building with associated driveway, parking area, closed drainage system, septic system, and utility connections. Stormwater from the site development will be directed to an infiltration basin that was designed to accommodate runoff from the Ricketts Pond Business Park definitive subdivision. A continuance has been requested by the applicant until April 23rd, 2024. So the chair will accept a motion to continue the public hearing on the application of Bridgestone Development Lot Number 4, Spring Street Innovation District till April 23rd, 2024, Meeting Room 1, Carver Town Hall, 7 p.m.
I'll make that said motion.
Motion made by Mr. Robinson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gatsky. Further discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Gatsky?
Aye.
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ellen Sedillo says aye.
Don Williams says aye.
And Mr. Shea says aye. Planning board member notes?
Go ahead.
After you.
Flag football season kicks off Sunday. Carver High School, Middle High School, 8:30 in the morning.
And are they still accepting applications?
Kind of.
Did they do it through the rec committee?
We're starting practices and stuff like that. So, but no, it's not through the rec committee. It's through Carver Flag football on the Facebooks.
On the Facebook. Excellent.
I just want to remind everybody of the upcoming election, and it is their freedom and right to vote. And we'll have one more meeting. I'll be reminding our citizens of April 27th election day. Do we have the hours?
I don't have the hours. We can check, but I believe it runs from approximately 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But
Okay.
I can't be locked down on that. And yes, it is your responsibility as a voter in the town to gather information and make your votes. Make a responsible decision. All right. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of March 12th, 2024?
I did.
Yes.
The chair will accept a motion to approve the edited minutes of March 12th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Gasky,
I'll say.
second by Ms. Sardillo. Do we have further discussion?
None of this.
Seeing none, Mr. Gasky
Aye.
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ellen Sedillo says aye.
Carl Williams says aye.
and Mr. Shea says aye. I see we have a civics class in attendance.
And we have a repeat return civics member to our far left.
Which
I
one?
believe he was here before, right?
No,
Gentleman in the Gap shirt?
I don't think anybody's willingly came twice. I wish I could say different.
Shame.
We want to
You
thank
look
you all,
familiar.
and we want to thank you for coming and paying attention. And we think it's an important part of the process that gets people interested in it. Does anybody in the audience have any questions or concerns or comments for the board? A lot of people have, surprisingly, and I'm very impressed at the amount of students that have had questions. So please feel free to come on up and ask us.
I think you guys have to come forward anyways for us to
Well,
sign
yes,
off
but you can
on
wait,
your homework,
you can
right?
wait till after the meeting for that. All right. So the chair will accept a motion for adjournment.
I will make said motion.
Motion made by Ms. Sardillo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gasky. Mr. Gasky.
Aye.
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ellen Sedillo says aye.
Carl Williams says aye.
And Mr. Shea says aye. Thank you very much and have a good evening.